40 years on the line at the plant, and my son-in-law figured he had me read in about 4 minutes. People do that with a man who doesn't talk much. They mistake quiet for empty. They look at the worn boots in the truck with 240,000 kilometers on it, and they fill in the rest of the story themselves, and they never once think to ask whether the story they wrote is the one that's actually true. I let them. For 11 years, I let one particular man write whatever he wanted about me, because the thing about staying quiet is that people stop watching you, and when people stop watching you, you can build something right under their noses that they'll never see until you decide to show them. Welcome to Dad's Cold Revenge. Settle in, pour yourself something, and let me know down in the comments what part of the country you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. It's free and it helps an old man more than you know. Now let me tell you about Thanksgiving. It was the second Monday of October, up in Bracebridge, about 2 hours north of Toronto, where my daughter Lauren and her husband had bought a place on the river 3 summers back. Muskoka. Cottage country. The kind of town where the leaves turn the color of a struck match in October, and the people turn a particular kind of pleased with themselves around the same time. I'd driven up from Oshawa that morning, left before the sun was properly up, thermos of coffee between my knees, the 400 nearly empty in the sky going from charcoal to that thin gray you only get in the fall. I like that drive, always have. 2 hours alone with the radio low and nobody needing anything from me. I pulled into their driveway a little after 11. Real nice place. Cedar siding, big windows facing the water. A doc my son-in-law liked to mention he'd had redone, the way other men mention their cardiologist. I sat in the truck a minute before I went in. I always do that. Engine ticking as it cools, hands still on the wheel, just taking a breath and getting myself ready. I love my daughter. I want to be clear about that from the start. But walking into a room that my son-in-law has decided he's the host of takes a certain amount of preparation. The same as walking onto a floor you know is going to be slick. You map your exits. You decide ahead of time how much you'll let land. And you remind yourself that there is nothing wrong with a man drinking ginger ale on a holiday, and anybody who's got a comment about it can keep it to themselves. I'd brought a butter tart squares my late wife used to make, her recipe, in the same scratched-up Pyrex she'd carried to 40 years of potlucks. I carried it to the door with 2 hands. Lauren opened it before I knocked. She's got her mother's way of knowing when I've arrived, without being told. She wrapped me up right there on the step, both arms, the way you hold on to something to check it's still solid. "You're too skinny, Dad. I weigh exactly what I weighed when your mother was alive. You're too skinny." She said it again, like I hadn't spoken, and took the Pyrex out of my hands before I could argue about where to set it down. That's my girl. The argument is just a formality. The food is how she says she's been worried. The house was warm and full of that good noise. A turkey going in the oven, somebody's kids tearing down the hallway, the dog losing its mind. And then I heard him. My son-in-law Grant has a laugh that gets into a room a few seconds ahead of the rest of him. Big, easy, pitched just loud enough to make sure you know the most interesting man present has been located. He was out on the back deck holding court by the propane heater, a glass of something amber in his hand, telling a story to Lauren's sister and her husband, and they were laughing in that way. People laugh when they've decided the safest thing to do is agree. Grant is 41. He sells high-end real estate around the lakes, the kind of cottages that go for 2 and 3 million to people from the city. And somewhere along the way, he got it into his head that closing on waterfront made him an authority on how every other man ought to have lived his life. He saw me come out onto the deck, and his whole face opened up. There he is, Big Ray himself. He only calls me Big Ray when there's an audience. I've never once asked to be called that. He grabbed my hand and did the thing where he covers it with his other hand, that politician's clasp that's meant to feel warm and lands like a man planting a flag. "Wasn't sure you'd make the drive, Ray. Road's okay for the old truck? Truck's fine. Good, good." He'd already half turned back to his audience. That's Grant's gift. He never stays in a moment long enough to feel the weight of it. I've always stayed in moments. That one's mine. The afternoon went the way these things go. Lauren ran the kitchen like an air traffic controller. The grandkids, her 2 and her sister's 3, orbited the snack table. I found a spot near the window where I could watch the river and not be in anybody's way, which is my preferred position at most gatherings, and I had myself a genuinely good time for a couple of hours. I should have left at 4. I know that now. Dinner came out around 5. Grant carved, because Grant carves, And he made a small speech about it because of course he did. We sat, and it was somewhere between the turkey and the pie that he decided to do the thing he does. He tapped his glass with his fork. Got that look. I just want to say a couple things while we're all here. Lauren glanced at me from across the table, quick the way her mother used to. Grant stood. Been a heck of a year for us. Lauren and I refinanced and put the addition on. Business is up 30% in a down market. Kids are in the French immersion program now. He let that sit. Some of us are really finding our stride. And then he looked at me direct, made sure the table followed his eyes there. And then, some of us. That smile widening, the one that makes people think he's joking when he is not joking even a little. Some of us are, 63, working the same line job he had at 23 before they bought the place out and pensioned everybody off. Driving the same truck, living in the same little house in Oshawa. Whole life, and not a whole lot to point at, But hey, he raised his glass toward me like a toast. You made the drive. Gotta give him that. We keep hoping the old man figures it out one of these days, eh? A short laugh from his side of the table. Lauren's sister looked at her plate. The kids didn't understand and kept eating. And the room did that thing. That specific silence that drops when something's gone too far, and every adult at the table knows it and not one of them moves. Lauren's jaw was tight. She started to say something. I caught her eye and gave the smallest shake of my head. Let it be. I looked at my son-in-law standing there with his refinance and his 30% and his French immersion, and I felt something move in my chest. Not anger. Something quieter and older than anger. Something that had been very patient for a very long time and had just now decided that this was the day. I set my fork down. Slow. The way you set a tool down when you want both hands free. Don't you worry about me, Grant. My voice came out level, almost bored. I'm doing all right. He laughed, pleased with himself, and raised his glass again to the table. That's the thing about Ray. Man of few words. I turned to my daughter instead. This turkey's better than your mother's, Lauren. Don't tell her I said it. Lauren's eyes went wet and she laughed at the same time and said, Dad. Somebody changed the subject. The dog knocked something over. The moment passed for everyone at that table but me, because somewhere in my chest a thing had just clicked into place. Quiet and clean. Like a breaker thrown after 11 years of waiting for the right hand to throw it. He had no idea. Not about the numbered company. Not about the 11 rental units across Oshawa and Whitby with my name behind them. Not about the fact that the property management firm his own brokerage had been quietly leasing from for the last 2 years answered. 4 owners deep to me. He didn't know any of it. And I had spent 11 years making very, very sure he didn't. They say pride's the most expensive thing a man can carry. My son-in-law had been running the tab up for years. It came due on a Wednesday in November. That Wednesday it was sleeting in Oshawa, the kind of November sleet that isn't quite rain and isn't quite snow and can't seem to commit to either, ticking against the office windows in a way that's almost peaceful if you're warm and dry behind them. I was at my desk by 7. I keep an office now, small one, second floor of a building I own off Simcoe Street, over a physiotherapy clinic and a place that does taxes. Nothing fancy. A good chair, a window, and a coffee maker that I trust more than most people. I'd been retired from the plant 6 years by then, but a man's got to go somewhere in the morning or he starts to come apart, so I go there. Manage the units, read the leases, watch the sleet. My phone went at 9:40. I looked at the screen. Grant. I set my coffee down, let it ring twice.
Not for drama.
I needed those 2 rings to decide which version of myself was going to pick up. The father-in-law, the landlord, or the man who'd been quietly holding up a corner of his son-in-law's whole operation for 2 years without him knowing whose corner it was. I answered on the 3rd ring. Grant, Ray, hey. And right away I could hear it. Grant's voice is always a size too big for a phone. This wasn't. This was a smaller voice than I'd ever heard come out of him. You got a minute? He needed more than a minute. I've got a few. A breath. The sound of him moving, pacing. He's paced when he's cornered since the day Lauren brought him home. So I'm just going to be straight with you. The brokerage is in trouble. Real trouble. We've been carrying the lease on the King Street offices and 2 satellite spots, and the market up north, just. It fell out from under us this fall. Cottage sales are dead. Dead, Ray. I've got agents I can't pay. I've got the landlord on the King Street building threatening to. He stopped. Started again quieter. Lauren doesn't know how bad it is. I haven't told her. I can't lose this, Ray. I can't go home and tell her He didn't finish that one either. I already knew most of it. I knew more about Grant's brokerage than Grant would ever have guessed, because Grant's brokerage leased its King Street offices from a management company, and that management company reported up a chain of ownership, and at the top of that chain, 4 layers up where nobody ever bothers to look, was a numbered Ontario company, and behind that company was me. The landlord he was so afraid of was me. He'd been writing rent checks to me for 2 years, and never once known whose name was at the bottom of the well. The line stretched out long between us. Ray, you still there? I'm here. I wouldn't be calling if I had another option. I want you to know that. I've got nobody else I can. I know, Grant. I let the sleet tick against the glass a while. Then I said, come down to Oshawa tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll text you the address. A pause. Something recalibrating on his end. You've got an office? I'll text you the address. 9 o'clock, Grant. Don't be late. He was late. 9:20 when the woman from the physio clinic downstairs buzzed up to say there was a man here looking for me. Of course he was. I told her to send him up. I heard him on the stairs, not the laugh this time. Just a man's feet on old wood, slower than usual. The door opened and Grant came in and stopped, taking in the place. The leases in their binders, the framed photo on the wall, the window with the gray lake light coming through it. Recalculating, you could see it, like a man updating a file he hadn't opened in years. I let him stand there. Then I said, sit down, Grant. He sat. And that's when the door from the back office opened and Lauren walked out. I should explain. My daughter had known for 6 years. She'd been the one to push me into it, back when her mother passed, and I had the insurance money and no idea what to do with myself, sitting in that empty house going quietly to pieces. Lauren's the one who said, Dad, you understand buildings better than anyone I know. You've fixed every house on the street for free your whole life. Do something with it. So I did. She kept the books. She'd kept them every month for 6 years at her own kitchen table after Grant had gone to bed. She'd never told him. Not because either of us set out to deceive the man. Because, as she put it to me once, he doesn't ask me a single question about my own life, Dad. Why would I hand him this one? Grant looked at his wife standing there in my office with a folder under her arm, and I watched the color go out of his face and not come back. Lauren? What are you doing here? She set the folder on the desk in front of me, and she didn't sit. I do Dad's books, Grant. I've done them for 6 years. Her voice was steady as still water. Every month, while you were asleep. He looked at her, then at me, then at her again, like a man trying to make 2 maps line up that just won't. Whose books? What books? Ray, what is? I opened the folder and slid the first page across the desk to him. Statement of properties. 11 of them, addresses down the left, Oshawa and Whitby, and one over in Bowmanville, the one with the good tenants who'd been with me 9 years. He looked at it. I gave him time. Then I slid the second page across, the lease for the King Street offices, his brokerage's name on the tenant line, and up at the top the landlord, the numbered company, and clipped behind it the corporate registration, the one document that connects that number to a name, my name. He stared at that page a long time, longer than the first. I watched him read it twice, 3 times, watched his thumb move along the line where my name sat under the words sole director and officer, watched the whole thing land on him by degrees, the way ice lets go of a roofline. Not all at once, but pane by pane until the whole sheet slides. His voice had gone somewhere small. The King Street landlord. The one who's been, that's you. You've been my landlord. For 2 years, 2 years in January. And you never, he stopped. Every month I sent that check cursing the guy and it was, he couldn't finish. It was me, I said. Plain. No drama on it. Just a fact set down on the table where he could see it. Lauren spoke before I could go on. He's a better businessman than you'll ever be, Grant, and he never once needed you to know it. She wasn't cruel about it. She said it the way you'd report the weather. That was somehow worse for him, I think, the calm of it. 63 years old, same truck, same little house, and he owns half the street you've been driving past your whole marriage. Grant put his face in his hands for a second. When he brought it back up, something had changed in it. Not just shame, though there was plenty of that. Something underneath the shame. The particular look of a man realizing that the whole story he'd been telling himself about somebody else, the quiet one, the simple one, the one with nothing to show, was never the true story, not even close to it. Ray, he shook his head. Why didn't you ever say anything? 11 years. Every holiday, every dinner, he winced, hearing himself. Why would you just sit there and let me? I folded my hands on the desk and looked at him for a good while before I answered. Because I'd known the answer to that one for a long time. Because I never felt the need to explain my life, I said, to a man who'd already decided what it was worth. He had nothing. First time in 11 years I'd watched my son-in-law hunt for words and come up with none. I let it sit. Then I told him the rest of it, because I'd decided he was going to hear all of it, once, and clearly, so there'd be no misunderstandings between us going forward. The winter Lauren was pregnant with Maddie. You remember that winter? His jaw worked. You two were 3 months behind on the condo, and you didn't tell anybody. Lauren told me. I paid the arrears the next morning. You never knew where the money came from. You thought the bank made an error in your favor, and you took it as luck. That wasn't luck, Grant. That was me. He stared. The truck loan you co-signed for your brother that went sideways, that nearly took your credit down with it 3 years ago. The reason the collection stopped. The reason it never hit your file. That was a call I made to a man I used to work the line with whose son does collections now. I called in a favor I'd been holding 15 years. I kept my voice level the whole way through, steady as a man reading a gauge. You threw a barbecue that summer and told everybody you'd handled it yourself. I sat back. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I want you to hear that part too. I'm telling you because you stood up at my daughter's table, on Thanksgiving, in front of her children, and you decided my life was something to feel sorry for. And I needed you to understand just once what nothing to show for it actually looks like, and what it doesn't. Grant, who always had something to say, who never in 11 years met a silence he didn't rush to fill, sat in my office and said absolutely nothing. Lauren came around the desk then and put her hand on my shoulder. She looked at her husband. I'm not leaving you, Grant, she said quietly, but you're going to sit with this, and you're going to apologize to my father like you mean it, not today, but when you've actually understood what you're apologizing for. He nodded. He looked at the both of us standing there, his wife and the old man he'd written off, and his eyes were wet, not crying. A man like Grant doesn't cry in another man's office, but closer than I'd have bet money on. Ray, he said, and his voice came out rough. What do I do now? I stood up, walked to the window, looked down at the sleet turning to plain honest snow over Simcoe Street, the way it does once November finally makes up its mind. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to forgive the next 3 months on the King Street lease. Not forever. 3 months. To give you room to breathe. I turned around. And I'm going to send you to a fellow I know, Doug Friesen, does restructuring for small outfits out of Whitby. He'll go through your books with you the way they need going through. Your back end's a disaster, Grant. It has been for years, and you've been papering over it with commission checks and good months. Doug'll fix it. You'll do what he says. Grant blinked at me. You'd still, after you married my daughter, I said. You're the father of 2 of my grandkids. That doesn't get returned because you ran your mouth at a dinner table. I held his eye. I told you I'd help you, I will. That's not in question, and it never was. But you're going to do it my way, and you're going to do it humble. And somewhere in there you're going to learn the difference between a man who needs everybody to see what he's got, and a man who just needs the thing to be real. He stood up slow. Looked around the little office one more time, the binders, the window, the quiet evidence of a life that had been built carefully and on purpose while he wasn't looking. All this, he said, this whole time. And you let me stand up there and let you talk? I walked him to the door and opened it. Sure, I let you talk. Talking never cost me anything. I just never let it change a single thing about what I was doing. I held the door. That's the whole difference between us, Grant. You needed the room to know. I just needed it to be true. He went out into the hall and stopped and turned back. Stood there a second, a man recalculating 11 years all at once, doing the arithmetic on every dinner and every big ray and every joke he'd ever landed at my expense, and watching the total come out wrong. For what it's worth, he said, and his voice dropped low. I should have seen you a long time ago. The real one. I'm sorry I didn't. I let that land. Let it be exactly what it was. Drive safe getting home. The 401's going to be a mess in this. He nodded, went down the stairs slower than he came up. I heard the door at the bottom, and then his car in the lot, and then nothing but the sleet gone soft to snow against the glass. Lauren stayed. She made us both a coffee from the machine I trust, and we sat by the window a while not saying much, the way her mother and I used to, watching Oshawa go white and quiet below us. After a bit she said, "Was that what you wanted? Did it feel good?" I thought about it honestly before I answered her, the way she'd want me to. It didn't feel good, I said. It felt finished. Maddie had a swim meet that Saturday. The little one, Theo, had decided he was going to be a paleontologist and had questions I had no answers to. There was a leaking tap at the Bowmanville unit I'd been meaning to get to myself, rather than send a man. The snow was coming down clean and steady now, covering over the day, and the lake light was going gold the way it does for about 10 minutes before the dark comes in. Some men spend their whole lives being loud, just to make sure they get counted. I spent mine quiet, building the thing itself, where nobody was looking. I know which one I'd do again. If this one landed with you, do an old man a favor and hit that like button, and subscribe if you're new here. There's a fresh story every week. I'll see you on the next one.